Well, folks, I hope you are ready for an absolutely insane week in the stock market. I want to take you through exactly what's going on this week, what I'm planning on doing this week, and kind of get you mentally prepped for what's about to occur here, because it is about to be insane. Okay, first off, let me not be rude. Okay, let me welcome you to Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, Birmingham, Alabama in the house. I'm still trying to understand this concept of, somebody plants a tree or plants grass and you don't have to water it. Like, I'm just still trying to understand that concept. Coming from Vegas and living in the desert almost my entire life, I'm still trying to understand this concept because, man, just so many beautiful trees everywhere, massive trees. You got the grass everywhere, and it's just I can't even understand this concept. Like in Vegas, you can't even plant grass. It's pretty much illegal now to plant grass. Like in my backyard, I have all fake turf because we can't afford to use the water to have grass in the actual backyard, right? And try to plant a tree out in Vegas and see how long that thing stays around for. I mean, geez, you don't have much of a chance, especially if you don't water it. So it's just it's beautiful to see just a place where water is so plentiful, because out in the desert, man, hey, we might have money out there out in Vegas, but believe me, we're compensating for something, okay? And the thing we're compensating for is the fact that we ain't got no damn water, okay? So, hope you guys enjoy this video as always, okay? Before we get into this, a few pieces of housekeeping, all right? First thing, I recorded a video that I released on Friday. First off, it was before I was leaving town, so I was trying to do all this work and stuff, and I had been up for probably 24 hours straight, if not over 24 hours straight, when I recorded that video. And I definitely had a comment or two about Jeremy, you sound defeated in that video, okay? And I just want to address that. So first off, when you've been up for that long in a row, you're not in the best mood. Exactly, right? And I got absolutely wrecked in the market on Friday. I was down at least probably a few $100,000, right? So it was a bad day for me in the market. I'd been up for probably over 24 hours straight, and so I was probably feeling a little defeated when I recorded that video. So first off, I apologize for that. I was kind of just in a let's just call it a downer mood, and I probably shouldn't have recorded that video, to be quite frank. But I did, and it is what it is, right? So yeah. Anyways, I just thought that was worth addressing. I'm definitely not defeated, but when you've been up that long. What, 2,000 videos I've done now? Holy smokes, that's insane. I actually had no clue it was that many. That's a lot. But yeah, when you've been up that long and you're getting wrecked in the market, I mean, a little tough, okay? Next piece of housekeeping. I got this rental Kia, okay? I got a rental Kia right now. I'm driving around the South, and this is crazy. So last night, I'm driving from Tuscaloosa, Alabama to Birmingham, and I was super sleepy. But I made the drive, okay? But then I saw there was a feature inside the Kia, not only for cruise control, but there was also this feature that would basically keep you in the lane. So I was like, oh man, this is almost like autopilot. This is kind of cool, in the Tesla, because obviously I drive an S and an X when I'm at home, right? And so I'm like, oh, this is probably pretty cool. So I mean, it did a decent job, actually. Now, was I scared of my life? Absolutely, because it's a Kia, and they never even talk about this. And I don't even think they realize how big of a deal this is, but I thought it was pretty darn cool. The one thing that wasn't cool is it wasn't able to keep the distance, so I put it on cruise control, and in a Tesla, if you put it on not just cruise control, but the full autopilot thing, right? Basically, if you start coming up on a car, it'll slow down. Even if you got it set at 75 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour or whatever, right? And you start coming close to a car, it's going to keep a certain amount of distance always, right? And it'll maintain that distance. Well, this Kia just kept speeding up. Next thing you know, I was almost in the back of another vehicle. I was like, oh crap, man. Yeah. So anyways, it was decent, actually. I got to say, at least in terms of keeping, in the lane and whatnot, I was like, man, Kia needs to advertise this more. And I think that gets into a problem with a lot of these other automakers, is even if they try to replicate some of the technology Tesla has, they just don't do a good job marketing it, to be quite frank. And so, if those things aren't marketed well, one, consumers don't know about it, but not only that, people are going to have major trust issues with it, because it's like, why aren't you marketing this, right? And so with Tesla, when I put on autopilot, I feel pretty darn safe, almost as safe as if I was driving the vehicle. But with these other automakers, it's like, if you don't put marketing into your stuff, people aren't going to trust it. And also, you got to go that last mile, because otherwise, it's just not the same, right? So, anyways, I thought it was kind of amazing that Kia had this technology just in this basic Kia, but anyways, they didn't quite finish the product. Let's just put it that way. But never know. Last piece of housekeeping here. I don't know how many of you guys follow me on Instagram, but I posted this on Instagram, and this is not the first time I've seen a sign like this, unfortunately, over the past 6 months. And, it breaks my heart to see these sorts of signs, right, to our loyal customers. This was this little cute, like, restaurant in Birmingham, Alabama, and, it says, thanks for your support over the last 2.5 years. Well, we've had some incredible memories together. Like many other restaurants, we have faced supply chain issues, staffing obstacles, and mounting inflation-related costs. As such, we have decided to close indefinitely. And just kind of unfortunate. I've just seen a lot of those, restaurants and even bars in different places just go under. Over the past 3 to 6 months, they just, there's it's too much for remember, a lot of these these local restaurants and places, right? These are local places. Like, they're not these aren't Fortune 500 CEOs leading these companies to deal with these sorts of times, right? And so we're kind of in an unprecedented situation, and a lot of businesses just can't make it that are small businesses, and that's unfortunate. I always am a big believer that small business is what really runs the United States of America, as much as the big companies matter and employ massive amounts of people, right? I've always been a huge proponent of small business. I still, to this day, feel like if you want to get out of poverty, start a small business. I always think that's the best. And I know not many people watch my channel that are in poverty. Most of you guys are doing very well for yourselves, and that's awesome. But, if somebody came to me and they said, I'm trying to better my financial situation, start a small business. Like, that's always the thing. And I think that's one of the things that differentiates the United States versus many other places in the world, is we just have always just a very strong small business community. So it breaks my heart to kind of see small businesses go under like that. But in this sort of environment, you got to understand, like, not everybody that's running a small business is a business genius, right? Not everybody that's running a small business is like super high EQ business. They're trying to just make a living and handle things the best way they can. But in this sort of environment, you gotta be the creme de la creme, to make it in this sort of environment, just to be quite frank. And different things can wipe out different businesses, right? The great financial crisis, that was because people just didn't have money to spend. That's why companies went under in that situation, right? Like, businesses just didn't have access to capital, no access to debt. People didn't have money to spend, and so that wiped out a ton of small businesses. In this situation, it's very different. Obviously, it's for all these other various issues that a lot of these restaurants and places just can't make it. Like, yeah, we got customers, but we don't have staff. We got too much inflation crap. Like, we can't even raise prices enough to keep up with this, right? So that's just tough to kind of see that, okay? Alrighty, guys, so let's get into the insanity coming up here for the stock market. So CPI comes out Thursday, all right? So CPI, now the Fed's starting to focus on maybe some other inflation metrics, but CPI is still, in my opinion, the thing that the stock market's looking at the most, and this is what the stock market cares about the most. And when it comes to CPI, here's the situation. If you want to talk about a chance to get the market to start to bottom and maybe potentially start to go up and maybe have that November, December rally, well, it starts with this CPI. If we can have a decent number, and we'll get into the numbers in just a moment, where it's not something absolutely insane crazy, then you can begin to justify, like, oh, the Fed might, stop raising rates at the end of this year. But if we come in with another crazy epic number, people are just going to lose all faith that the Fed's done raising rates anytime soon, because they're just going to be like, they have to get inflation down. And so this is going to absolutely move the market in a massive way on Thursday, okay? And basically, starting in May of 2021, that's when we cracked 5% in CPI. And basically, anything over 5% in CPI is insane. And, that's when the Fed really starts to have to take things very, very serious. And now there was a belief for basically most of 2021 that inflation was transitory and that it would eventually come down. It never came down, and it remained extremely sticky, and it just got worse and worse and worse, right? But that was the first time it cracked the 5. So basically, we've been in, almost a year and a half of extremely high inflation, unacceptably high, which once again, anything over 5% CPI is basically inflation that just the Fed can't accept. It's ridiculous, to be quite frank. And that's the situation. Now, in terms of, my hope, in terms of a number here, and if we're thinking about the market rallying off something, the number would be something in the sevens, okay? And if we can get something in the sevens, I think that's a moment, especially obviously the lower the sevens it is. I think that's a moment where we can begin to start to have a potential rally in the market and have some good feelings out there, right? Around the Fed potentially stopping raising rates at the end of this year, and the hope that, they chill for a while and let things kind of play out. Let's just call it that. If we get another 8 number, the market just can't rally off the back of that. That's just devastating. So we need something in the sevens that would make us feel good, at least, right? Because we peaked at a 9% plus a few months ago. Then we went down to the 8s. Now if we can come in with a 7, it steps in the right direction. People say, okay, we are at 9, we went 8, we went 7. Then people start to think, okay, maybe very, very low 7s next month, or maybe 6s, right? And then the next month they say, okay, maybe low 6s, maybe 5s, okay? And so that's where you can begin to at least get some real hope around inflation and better feelings around inflation, okay? So it's going to be very, very important for the market. And yeah, my hope is, come on, man, we need a 7s. We need a 7s, please, man. The only good news we have in regards to inflation is obviously commodities have been coming down massively over the past 3 to 6 months. And on top of that, another good thing is, you're having a comp against these very, very tough numbers year over year now at this point, okay? Now, Thursday before the bell also, Taiwan Semiconductor, which is TSMC, which is pretty much the biggest, semiconductor maker out there you're going to find. $362 billion in revenue last year in just a massive company. And, whatever company you're thinking of who makes chips, a lot of them go through TSMC, okay? So when it comes to TSMC, they're reporting earnings before the bell on Thursday, all right? Now, the situation with TSMC is, the good news is there's no expectations for this space. But the interesting thing with TSMC is they make a ton of mobile chips as well. Now, when it comes to mobile chips, right, those stocks haven't been hit nearly as hard. I basically put 6 stocks and compared them all for you guys here. AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, Skyworks Solutions, Qualcomm, Cruise. Okay, now Cruise, Qualcomm, and Skyworks, they're much more mobile chip companies. And obviously, Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, much more computer chip companies and PCs and things like that, right? And other products as well, but that's their main focus. So you can see a clear divergence between mobile chip manufacturers and more PC related ones, right? Look at Intel down 51% year to date, Nvidia's down about 60% year to date, and AMD's down over 60% year to date. Incredible numbers for incredible companies, to be quite frank. And you look at the mobile companies, Cruisy Doozy is only down 27.5%. In a year like this, being down only 27.5% is a massive W. That is the biggest W you can pretty much get, and that's how pathetically sad this year is. The 27.5% is a win down, but that's this year, okay? Qualcomm's down 35% year to date. Skyworks Solutions down 45%. Those are all wins in this sort of environment, unfortunately. But there's a clear divergence there. So when it comes to TSMC, we'll see what they report. If we get kind of devastating news, in regards to mobile chips, obviously it's going to damage Apple and damage the market to a new leg lower. Something that actually made me bullish. This is kind of a funny story. So I was at this, football game last night, Alabama game, and I love to watch, see people obviously recording with their phones and stuff like that, and it was just interesting seeing how many people have older generations of iPhone, and just like seeing that, and I could just tell like, oh, that person's got like an iPhone 12 or like an iPhone 10 or iPhone 11, something like that. I think they called the 10 the X or something like that, right? But it's just kind of interesting to see that, because it just makes you like remember like how many people are going to be upgrading, not just over the next year, but over the next several years when it comes to Apple, and those devices eventually end up breaking, right, and start losing battery as the battery gets older. And I saw definitely some people on some red bars at that game. So obviously that's just something that is just a long-term huge benefit to Apple and all these mobile manufacturers of chips like a Qualcomm, like a Cruzy Doozy, Skyworks, and these others, to be quite frank. But yeah, that earnings before the bell on Thursday is going to be huge, okay? Before the bell also, I don't know how many of you guys have ever heard of BlackRock, but they're the biggest company that most people have no clue about, essentially. BlackRock has $10 trillion of assets under management as of January. Now, the number is probably a lot less now because assets have become much less valuable than they were back in January. No doubt about that. But this is one of the biggest companies in the world, and not a lot of people even know about BlackRock, and it's just crazy. But they're going to be reporting their earnings basically before the bell on Thursday. And when it comes to BlackRock, I think the outlook is going to be important as well when it comes to BlackRock, okay? Next up here, WBA. They are reporting earnings before the bell on Thursday. Now, this is what I talk about in a crash. What do I tell you guys about a crash in the market? Is when you're in the final stage and by the time you got to the end of a crash, essentially, everything's going to have gotten hit. It didn't matter, the dividend, didn't matter how much cash flow they have or how much net income. By the end of the thing, everything gets hit. It's just a question of how hard did it get hit, okay? And I think WBA is a perfect example of this. Because, we're talking about a straight profit machine, a straight cash flow machine in WBA, right? But this is a company that stock price has still gone down 42% and just been absolutely obliterated. Year to date, down 42%. Basically, the stock's been almost cut in half. Insane, right? Imagine their earnings are a little troubling and it goes down even more. Next thing you know, it's been cut in half, right? And the stock has a 6.3% dividend yield right now. That's a ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, absurd dividend yield, 6.3%. But yeah, that's the sort of market, to be quite honest. Honestly, I think I might be buying some WBA soon because that dividend is just too juicy, too dang juicy. Okay, now on Friday you got a ton of financials reporting earnings, but the biggest of those are going to be J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo. Okay, now here's the deal. It's not just about the earnings of J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo. In the financials in general on Friday, right? It's not just going to be about that. It's going to be about the commentary, the guidance. Now, in regards to JP Morgan specifically, something that's going to be hurting their business that not a lot of people even know about is, I shouldn't say not a lot of people know about, but they don't think about, is the IPO market. Companies going public is dead. It's been basically done this entire year, and is going to probably be in a bad spot for at least 6 to 12 months. Because the reason is we have to start seeing the market bounce back for at least 3 to 6 months before companies even start to consider doing an IPO. So let's say we start getting the November, December rally. Then let's say it's not the end of the world in 2023. People are like, okay, it's actually going to be decent, and the market keeps moving up. By that time, that doesn't put companies to IPO until summer of 2023 at the earliest. And that's if we start bouncing and we have a November, December rally. So think about that for a moment, man. And so that's going to be something that's going to hurt JP Morgan numbers in a massive way on a year-over-year basis. So do keep that in mind. But the commentary is extremely important when it comes to JP Morgan and Wells Fargo, not just the numbers, okay? Now, the thing I'm looking forward to is the fact that we're going to get back to a fundamentals-based market. The market's had no fundamentals to move off of for the last month, and it's just pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. But now with CPI coming out, right, and within getting into the gauntlet of earnings that are going to start Thursday, Friday, and then we're going to get really crazy over the next few weeks. Stay tuned for that. But the market's going to have to get back to more fundamentals, and so I like that as a long-term investor that believes in fundamentals. I like the market getting back to fundamentals and not just fear for fear, right? Now, in terms of me, I'm buying stocks left and right now, right? This is all the moves. This is just some of the moves I made on Friday. Meta, Oatly, Palantir, Chef, Honest, and Revolve. And this is more moves: Planet, Meta, Palantir, Oatly, Chef, Corsair, Honest, and Fubo. So obviously made a ton of moves. On Friday in general. By the way, if you're looking to join my private stock group, get access to the private Discord chat and all the course curriculums. Check out pinned comment down there to apply to join us in there. But, when it comes to me, I'll likely be a buyer this week. And I think there's a much higher probability we're going to have a November, December rally than not. I'm ready if we just continue to, the market just continues to get wrecked for even November and December as well. I'm ready to buy. I think there's a lower probability of that, and there's a higher probability we're going to bounce in November, December. And so therefore, I'm trying to add as aggressively as possible, basically right now. Hope you guys enjoyed this as always. Thank you. Coming from a hotel room in Birmingham, Alabama. Much love as always, and have a great day.